So before we dive into the demo side of things, can you just talk us through what we've got here and how it's kind of connected?
Yeah,
because I know I can just feel their eyes, right? Tell us what they've got. Tell us what they've got.
You start because you've got the clock.
Yeah, all right. So I've got the Octatrack here, which is basically the clock and like the brain of the whole thing.
Yeah. Master clock, right? So
yeah, that's keeping time. Yeah, there's no laptop or anything. That's keeping time. I'd use all the channels. It has 8 channels, but I'm just going to use one for this just to keep it short. So we've got a sample on there, which we're going to like chop up to start with, and then it's also routing the analog 4 and the Digitac, the drum machine. So all it's doing for those is just keeping them in time. And then these have their own sequences. So I'm going to use those. I don't even know if I'll use it, but we'll see. And then this is going to be like the core drums. So like kick, clap, snare, like the basic stuff. The Digitac's running through this distortion pedal, which is called Overlord. It's like the Electro Harmonics one. It's really good. It's actually just dry, but it's just boosting it loads. And then this is System 1, which we would use for lots of things, but for this, we'll just use the bass on it, just to keep it simple. And then the MIDI goes all the way over to Warren, to his Digitac. We have 2 Digitacs. And now all this is doing is keeping that in time. And then that's controlling the MS-2000 as well.
Yeah, I'm sending MIDI to that, and then using this as a groove box to like create interesting grooves alongside
the texture. Yeah, the texture, yeah.
So essentially, master clock out from the analog rhythm, and everything else has got MIDI in, external clock, right?
Octatrack running everything, yeah. And the Octatrack is sequencing this as well.
Yeah.
And we like Warren's Digitac is running on the MS-2000, but also a lot of the time it's nicer just to play it.
Play free.
Yeah, to have something off the sequencer is much nicer. So, and the sounds of that thing really lends itself to kind of nice, flowy, freeform stuff. Yeah, so we kind of use it for that. We do have a few other bits in the studio, but this is like the core of it. Yeah.
So, we're in your studio now, obviously it's not Hoxton anymore, so you've got a bit more space.
Yeah.
You're under pressure because the rent's due. So
yeah. Gotta start making something.
Yeah. Start making something. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Should we give it a go?
Go for it, man.
All right.
Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah. Got a second. Okay. You done that? Just before, just for the heads up for you guys, so we're just they're gonna get in the zone for a little bit. If you've got any questions, just put them on your phone or something, and then you'll have lots of opportunity to ask questions. Is that cool? Wonderful. Cool. Beautiful. That's gonna be a wonderful project to edit. Cool. So, yeah, talk us through what we just heard. I mean, you know,
Who knows, man?
every second. Well, actually, what would be really useful would be to just maybe, yeah, from the lens of what we just heard, in terms of what you were doing, from the lens of each piece of equipment.
Yeah, sure.
That would be really useful.
All right. So the first thing we normally do, well, we've been doing for the last couple of months, is been starting with the Octatrack with a sample, like a top line sample. So we're using this like Latin percussion sample pack, which on its own sounds kind of nice, but we just put the sample in on here. This is really good for chopping stuff up and messing around with it. So, and like I said before, like coming up with unpredictable things, it's really good for that. So you just, I was just slicing it, and then I was moving the slices around, so then you get, I can solo it, I think. I'll turn it down. Nope. That.
Yeah.
So without the effects.
So all the filters and all the effects are built into the actual machine.
The filter on
Yeah.
all the Electron stuff is so
Yes,
good.
right.
So like, it can you can kind of hear it just being chopped. You can see it on the screen if anyone's close enough, but it's just messing it up a bit.
Yeah.
And then the filter is what really makes it come to life. So like,
Nice.
you get this lovely kind of low rumble, that kind of thing. So we normally just start there because whenever we do that, we just have no idea what we're going to get, and then that gives the whole thing a groove.
Yeah.
And then we just build up and emphasize the groove all the way through. So all the drums that we're putting in are all just hanging off that thing. And sometimes at the end, once we get into the box, we might even take that thing away. You don't even necessarily need it. It's just
That's a texture that just is
just a jumping off
reference point.
a jumping off point. Yeah. So start with that, and then I think I just put this just some really basic drums on this, like a hi-hat, and it's turned down, but like really,
Again, a good jump off point.
just really simple drums like kick, clap, and hat, and then I guess it's over to you at that point.
Yeah. I think I've got everything muted. Might have turned it down though. Without context, sounds quite chaotic.
Well,
but it's
if I mute all of this and play just the sample with, there you go.
Nice kind of syncopation.
That's
kind of
already
like
quite fully formed. Yeah, that's like a
absolutely.
nice groove. Yeah. Sounds nice actually. Sounds better without my drums. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
I mean, what's great is that you've both got confidence in each other's ideas, right? So I think that because what's interesting to see you collaborate here is that you've got your own space to do your own thing.
Yep.
Yeah, and then obviously you also give each other space to kind of just try different things and different.
Yeah.
I think we know how each other works well creatively with ideas. So yeah, if I can hear there's space, then I'll
Fill it in.
yeah I'll fill it in,
Yeah,
and then I'll kind of fill in the grooves, and I can hear what he's trying to do. It's like I take a step back, or it's vice versa. And there's no ego. Just if it sounds good, it sounds good.
But even fundamental things like I mean, is there times when you have the same two kick drums going at the same time, or do you know what I mean?
Or more.
And then it is what it is, right? Yeah.
Well, a nice thing about hardware is that you don't. If you produce in the box, you've got like a kick and a hi-hat and whatever. Whereas if you're doing this, it's just sounds. So it doesn't really matter what's filling what role. You know what I mean? It's just if it sounds good. Like filtering this sample down the top line thing. Sometimes it creates a kick drum. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it lives like really in the low mids, and like this one's kind of like rumbly and it's really bassy. We've made bass lines out of that before. Or sometimes it will be quite sitting quite high up and quite crunchy and bit crushed. It just depends what comes out. So kind of having the hardware like this really removes you from being like, this is a kick drum, that's a bass, that's a whatever. It's just same with all the sounds on Warrant. Like if you play yours again, none of the sounds are obviously certain.
Yeah.
just nice tones.
I kind of find
Absolutely.
that finding like effects, so field recorded sounds or general sounds that are sample effects are good for creating grooves. You get these really interesting textures that you wouldn't usually get just by playing straight up organic instruments.
Yeah.
So,
And of course, where you place them as well, you know, in terms of the grid or whatever.
So the swing pretty much is mostly in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even that just on its own sounds nice. Yeah.
It's interesting because I can't hear that necessarily because
While you're building
you're
it.
playing, but I can hear the spots and
You just hear
spaces
it's
that I know that you will leave.
complimenting. Yeah, exactly. It happens quite a lot. Where like, well, we build up something like this, and then you'll solo one bit, and you'll be like, "It sounds awful." But with everything else, it sounds
sounds good.
Absolutely, absolutely. Cool.
Happened today, right?
It happens every. all the
Listen,
time.
man, this is so bad.
We
And by
do-
the end, it's like, it makes sense.
we layer up our tracks a lot though. Like they're always quite like rich in terms of sometimes we have hundreds of tracks.
Yeah.
And most of them, 99% of them will be so quiet that they're just filling, like Warren said, like a little gap.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
consciously the listener's not going to pick them out.
Yeah.
Even with those sounds, like even hearing them now, you can't discern there's 8 samples there. It's just
It's like it's a collage of
Exactly,
it's a sum
yeah.
of parts. So to
exactly.
speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Let's see if these guys have got questions you'd like to ask.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
go
Just,
for it.
so with the mic, so we'll have to give
yeah.
you one of these mics. Hold 1 second. Just
So thank you. Just a question for you guys. I'm wondering when you stepped kind of out from the point of seeing yourself as artist with the release that you've done with some housey style, and you decide, okay, let's buy the Octatrack and go into more hardware production compared to a couple of years ago. Is that because of your music tastes are changing, or because you made a label that is be more techy than housey, or like, can you try
It's
to
a mix,
explain
I
this
think.
process? Or
I mean, we're into exploring sounds, and I think we kind of explored it a lot with the housey stuff we were doing.
Yeah.
And also, there was a sense that it's not a saturated market. I can't say that the sound is saturated in terms of the output, but you kind of hear a lot of the ideas being replicated a lot, and we thought we could do something different and unique if we pushed it a bit harder and come up with something which is unique to us.
I guess like with a lot of that, the house stuff that we were doing before, we've always listened to the kind of music. We still listen to house music and play it in our sets, but it's just, I feel like the sounds, like for me at least, the sounds got a bit exhausted. Whereas like what I like about this is we're kind of creating sounds where we don't really know what they are, or they don't have like a label. And
a rough concept, so it can be more creative because it
there's less
doesn't have
rules for
any
sure.
rules.
Yeah, there's no rules.
There's no
Yeah,
rules.
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
you can just do anything. It doesn't matter. Like
And-
we're trying to make the EP we're working on at the moment. We're trying to do a track that doesn't have any drums. That's still a dance track, just
Yeah,
because why not?
seems good.
Just to try it.
And how did you come up to say, okay, let's buy the Octatrack? That's the thing I'm.
was
You were
me.
bored?
I'm missing
I
the
was really
studio.
bored. Yeah. I was at home for Christmas. Had some family stuff going on, so I was at home for a long time, like 2 months, and I'd been eyeing it up, and I watched a bunch of videos, and I just thought, I'll just order it. Why not? I've got the time, and then I'm a proper nerd for this stuff, so I'd read the entire manual before I received it.
You're probably the first one, but like you did it good.
It's so sad.
We're applauding that.
Don't applaud that. Yeah. I should have been hanging out with my mum. She was watching Strictly Come Dancing. I was reading the Octatrack manual. No, I'd just been having my eye on one for ages, and then I watched a bunch of videos and thought it looks really exciting, and I really like the look of the unpredictability of it, and just it sounds good. Like the filter is amazing, and the effects are all really, really good. So it's just, and then I kind of like I'm quite techie anyway, so I was kind of like the challenge. So then I got that in like January or around Christmas, sat with it for a couple of months, and then just slowly, I mean, I've had this for 10 years, but like...
I think also we was trying to challenge ourselves with
process.
process.
Yeah.
So the process of making music, which we were comfortable and knew how to do, doesn't lend itself to being innovative necessarily.
Yeah, no, I can clearly see from the music that you're releasing that
Yeah.
since you got that, you changing style.
changed a
bit,
yeah.
In a good way, of course.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
That's kind of it, yeah. Just I mean, we're not like proper gear heads. Like we're not in a rush to buy any more. Like this is fine. It will take a long time to exhaust what we've got here, and I'd always recommend that to someone else. Like you never buy two things at once. You know, like buy one, sit with it for at least many months, 3, 4, 5 months, until you really know it inside out. And that's what happened with this. And then I just really enjoyed the workflow, like the way the sequencer on Electron works. And then I really like that. And then the sequencers on these two are exactly the same. So I just thought, well, when I bought this, it's like I already knew it inside out without even needing to look at it, because it's simpler than this. Exactly, and the same with this. There's like some nuances, but fundamentally it's the same. And then I didn't even when I bought it, I didn't even realize it could control other synths. So that was a real bonus. Yeah.
I remember you were messaging me every 2 days. Like, it does this.
I was so excited.
It does this.
Yeah.
And then I'd go away. I'm like, oh shit, it does that.
Do that. Yeah.
Maybe we can do that. And you're like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened.
So just a desire to get out of our comfort zone. We kind of felt like the house stuff we're doing, as much as we enjoyed it, I'm still proud of it and everything, but it just felt like we were repeating the studio sessions were becoming very similar, and then you don't want to, the next step after that is it gets boring, so try to change it.
Thanks.
Somebody else?
This mic's so much better than that mic. I've got a quiet voice, this is good.
Hello. Oh, that's quite loud. Hi. So I was really interested in the fact that you guys met each other, and the first track you made, you were saying like the A one was like the first thing you made in your studio, and that was the first thing you released.
Yep.
Yeah, because I'm in a position that I'm sure a lot of other people have been in, of sitting on music and not knowing how to like get it out there. So for you guys to have met each other through a shared sound and then start to get it out, I'm really interested in how that happened. And yeah.
Well, we both have released solo stuff before. Mm-hmm. So I'd had 7 or 8 records out, I think. You had quite a few singles out that done really well. How did it start? We messaged. It was on Heist. It was with Dan Swindle.
The beer helped, I think, because we were we were just sitting down and like, oh, what are you into? And I realised that there was some sounds and some ways of working that kind of led. We could go down this route, but I feel like the track doesn't really necessarily have that. So I don't really
know. We just emailed them, like the label. If that's what you're asking, like how do we get onto the label? Do you mean? Or
yeah, well, I think I was interested in the fact that you guys clearly have like such an affinity for each other's ability to play, if that makes sense. Like your sounds are like melded. So yeah, I was just interested in how the idea of the first track that you made together being something that you just were like, let's send this to a label. Was it just that you emailed it and were like, just backed it?
Yeah. Well, what happened exactly was Warren had it was this track, the premise, and Warren had the drum beat already made, which was just a loop. So we didn't really know what to do to start, so we just opened that and was like, this is good. And then I had a bunch of Rhodes samples from this guy I met in New York. I was on holiday in New York, and he gave me he had these vinyl rips of all these like Rhodes jazz players, so I'd cut those up using the Ableton Push. And then the Moog bass line was just one note, which sounded great because Moog sounds so good. So we were just lucky that the tone was right. We talked a bit about what we were into and the kind of sounds we liked and the labels we might be interested in and stuff like that. So Heist at the time was a big one for us.
Yeah.
I think we sent them maybe 8 or 9.
Yeah.
We made about 15 tracks in like 2 months. They were very quick.
Wow.
I think we were both at a similar point in our own solo career where it was like, well, now it's a good time that we've take what we've learned from there, and it's like, well, how can we take that and make it different and kind of push ourselves? I think that was the theme of the conversation was like, well, let's make music that we necessarily wouldn't usually make.
Wouldn't be able to do necessarily on our own.
Exactly.
Individually. Yeah.
So well, let's put it in that room and then let's see what happens.
Yeah, we were very lucky. Like the Martin and Lars just got back to us, which was good. We didn't know them at the time. That was a cold call. Yeah. And we also got signed to Phonica White like exactly the same time. Our first 2 records came out within 3 weeks, 4 weeks. The only reason we got to Phonica was because of Adriana, who's there, who we went to a Mr. Saturday party and met Simon from the guy who runs Phonica. We introduced him. I can't remember how. I think he noticed the track. I think we got signed a track over an Instagram story. I think that was it.
He saw an Instagram story of
We were
us
making-
filming in the studio, and he was like, "What's
Yeah.
that?"
Oh, really? Wow.
So I got a second EP signed.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
I was very lucky.
Yeah.
But I guess my advice would just be networking. Like, just go out to stuff like this and go out to gigs and meet the people you want, whose
I guess
label you want to be on.
we
Yeah.
kind of already sowed the seeds for knowing the people that we needed to know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we
we
didn't
were
know
halfway.
didn't know Martin and Lars, I
I
guess,
did,
but
I think I did.
you've met them, I think.
Yeah, I think. Well, I had a radio show and I asked them for a mix, and they did that.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know how I. But no, wait, didn't they see your solo stuff? Was that after?
Oh, they liked one of my solo tracks. They were playing that out a bit.
Yeah.
So we had a small in, I guess, but yeah.
Oh no, I met them in Berlin. I did the colours.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I guess the other part, I've had a lot of demos.
Yeah, we had a lot of stuff. I think listening to a new artist who had a lot of stuff that is fresh and raw because we just met. So that was kind of exciting for them to A&R that into something which...
There was a time where we had about 40 demos, like
Yeah.
40 finished tracks just sat on a private SoundCloud, and to get off the blocks, you need a lot. You
Yeah.
can't just make like one good track, you have to have a lot. Once you get more established and you start to, we can talk to labels now and they might want to do an EP with us, but we don't need to show them 40 tracks because they know we're good for it.
Yeah.
Because we've released stuff already and you've got that kind of momentum. Whereas if you're just starting out, you kind of have to show, I don't just have these four, I can do more than just this. So you got to get some quantity at the start. It makes it a lot easier. Labels also, like, I used to have this tactic on my own of getting signed to labels and be like, intentionally send them 4 good ones and 2 shit ones. Just so that they can turn down the 2 shit ones and choose the 4 good ones. But they're not really choosing the 4 good ones. You're just doing it so they feel like they're making the choice. It works.
Yeah.
Because if you just send them 4, they'll be like, oh, what else has he got?
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas if you send them like 6 or 8, they
Cool.
can pick. But you obviously put your best ones at the front and put the very best one at the end. I guess that kind of helps at the start for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. That was really helpful.
If you keep one thing from this evening, yeah, that's the tip.
Massage egos.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yes, question.
Chet. Hey, thanks,
Hi.
guys. So you mentioned that you like arranging and that it's maybe your favourite part. Can you maybe give us
Yeah, the
some
tone of your
inspiration
voice.
there? Like, what's your process? Like, is it you guys kind of jam like you just did then and you record it in, or sorry, I think it might be me.
Well, you've you've led me on nicely to my next question, which was, so leaning in back to the jam that we heard. Where would you go next? Obviously the arrangement is the next stage. So you've got this, 10 minutes or half an hour jam. Do you have, where would you go next in terms of deciding what elements to use? And then what tips can you give? What's your approach to arranging in terms of the narrative that you want to create in 5 or 7 minutes or whatever?
Well, it's interesting. We probably wouldn't have any conversation for that jam period. And then by that point, we'd have an idea of what... Because we've been working together for so long, we kind of have an idea of where we're trying to get... The other person's trying to get the track or where I'm trying to get the track. So I guess then we talk.
Hi, yeah, we're good. I think...
I mean, the label helps with that because we have a clear end goal to what the sound is. So whereas before we're just kind of making stuff and trying to find a lane, now we have the lane. It's like, all right, well, it fits in sonically there. And then but I think that we kind of we will know where the hook is, we will know where the bass or that.
We'll
That's
try and
good.
work out from the main event of the track, like the best bit. So we were aware that, like, when we're doing that, like we just did, there are moments when it does sound pretty nice. There's moments where it definitely sounds pretty chaotic. Yeah. So when we start, we record way more stuff than we need. So like everything will be firing and everything's playing and it all gets a bit too much.
Half an hour, a day? What?
Maybe half an hour, something like that.
By the time we've got to the half an hour,
If
we
it's not-
do this thing where we just look at each other.
Yeah, if it's not good in half an hour, I mean, just
And it's like,
restart. Yeah.
this is the bit I like, to see if you react to it.
Yeah. And then everything we don't like, just turn it off and redo.
then we go again.
We're very ruthless. Like we'll delete. So often what will happen, so like for example, I don't know, like the bass note on this has happened literally the other day. So we'll do something like that. We'll record it all. And time is a really good way of knowing whether your thing is any good. So we'll record it all. We'll just make a loop, and then we'll just not listen to it for some days, and then listen to it fresh and export, not the Ableton project. So you can't see the parts.
Yeah.
And then it really makes you realize, oh, that's too loud. This thing sounds actually kind of crass or whatever. And very often we re-record elements. So it might be like, oh, the bass line of that, I can kind of hear how it's working in the rest of the track now, but it's not quite right, because at the time I was just messing around. Whereas now I can really hear it. So then we'll just redo the MIDI, reprogram it, re-record it with the new vision of what it needs to be in mind. We do that a lot. In terms of the arranging, it's really we just work outwards from like the main event. Like where's the peak? Where's the best bit? Yeah. Doesn't need to be when the track's the heaviest, but just like the moment, where it's got to be the most engrossing bit. And then we'll just work out from that to lead up to it. I also think a lot about like physical space. So try and picture the track as a physical object. So like if it's large and it's in a big room, it requires a certain kind of reverb, and the bass is going to rumble and whatever. Or if it's small and compact and like claustrophobic, there's going to be no reverb and it's going to be tight and sharp. So we think about whether the track, which moods it requires, and then the arrangement will kind of work around those things, like a physical object coming in and arriving and moving and changing shape. And
I think also the fear of arranging is a thing, right? Obviously, because it's like you're committing all your ideas to this thing, and it's like you go through the creative process of hating it and then loving it again. But then we have this thing where we know that it's not the finished article, so we can listen back and be like, right,
by the end it's going to be good.
So a lot of the tracks that you probably would have heard have been through at least 4 or 5 facelifts in terms of like
well, we started posting them on Instagram now because it's quite interesting to see
erection or just
for us to be like, here's the initial sketch and it sounds chaotic as hell, and then by the end it's like quite refined. And there'll be 5 steps in between where the track, it's like remixing. We just remix the track, basically.
One of us will take it home and be like, no, it's not good.
Yeah, delete half of it, keep the very best bit, and frame it.
We'll always agree at the end after, like the machine.
That went through so many iterations. Yeah, we posted it, and the earliest version just sounds like, it doesn't sound bad necessarily, but
it's completely different.
Very raw and very, very different. Yeah, and then now it's quite a refined track, I guess.
So what I'm hearing is that, once you've had the jam, you spend this time, listening back to the jam, finding key moments. And when you find the moment that really resonates, that's almost like the peak.
Reframe
the peak
it.
of the moment.
Reframe
and just reframe that.
That's
I like that.
Yeah.
So when it comes to arranging, we get the idea of that. But in terms of the mixing process, what is that like? Because there's obviously a sound to the jam, right?
Precise.
And
that's we spend the most time doing the mix.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, you can have, just to go back to the arrangement for a second, like you can have an average, not average, but you can have like an okay loop, and if you arrange it really, really well, it can be an incredible track. It's really all about context and telling the story of it. If you can tee it up right. Yeah. So we don't worry like we just did earlier. We don't worry too much about that bit. Like putting in notes just doesn't really matter. You can refine that all later. Most of our tracks, I think even the Machine and some other ones, like Off-Road Vehicles as well, is one note. There's no chords. Everything's one note. All the acid line is just one note. It's just a filter that's moving. So it's not really about having to like add loads of stuff. It's just about finding that little precise bit that works well, and then chance, literally, and then mixing it is just, we take turns. Okay. One of us will sit at the back. So the way our studio is like we have a sofa at the back and the desk at the front, and the sofa at the back is like a real bass bin. So if you sit at the back, it sounds like you're in the worst spot of a club. So the bass is really rumbling and like it sounds like you're in a club toilet or something. And obviously the front is pretty neutral. So one person will be at the front for half an hour. One of us will sit at the back just working or whatever, and then we'll swap, and then we'll just do that all day for like a month on one track until it sounds just right. And then if we're lucky, we'll have a gig and we can play it at the gig.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's great because again, it's really refreshing to hear you talk through your openness, and the fact that you're exchanging ideas, you're very open about how tracks are developed, but also with the mixing process, it's not as if you're, again, fighting over a snare or whatever. You're almost like giving each other permission to go for it. But then while one's mixing, then one can be kind of objective about the track. So you're kind of,
sit back
your identity within the mixing process is actually great. There's this duality there, which is really interesting.
We have to trust each other completely. That's the only way.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever argued. We've argued about stuff, but never mixing or anything like that, because we just trust each other. Warren hears things differently to how I hear things, and both for the better. Neither are better or worse. So we always meet. We always meet in the middle.
The trust is we'll get there.
Yeah.
We have an idea of we've got a label now, so that's the sound.
That's like quality control.
Yeah. So we'll get there. Is
always.
Yeah. And there's no rules. So if you want to do it some certain way, as long as we get to the end product, then feel free.
Sure.
Yeah.
So with the mixing process, is there much processing going on? Obviously, it will vary from track to track, but I'm really interested in this idea that you've captured this, jam, this moment in time for half an hour, and then you've obviously done a really great edit of it. But then how do you take the spirit of that and then tweak that and refine that so it becomes the master, right?
So we've done this since the start, I think, but we'll have through each EP, we'll have a few things they're like tricks almost, like little mixing techniques or whatever that we've picked up, and then we'll really make sure that they're layered through a whole EP. So let's say we have 3 tracks that are ready and we know they're going to go on an EP together. What we'll start doing then is borrowing sounds from each of the 3 tracks and putting them into the other ones, even usually subconsciously, so it's not like an obvious sound. It could be like a tiny percussive thing or whatever, an effect, a certain setting on an effect, and make sure that that's in all 3. Mm-hmm. So kind of subconsciously, the tracks will live in the same sonic
sonic watermark.
World. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I could be. Do you want me to be really specific, or I mean,
that's all we're here for.
Yeah. Okay. So there's one at the moment, which is the erosion, the LFO thing.
Oh yeah.
Which is doing that on everything at the moment. So there's like a Ableton plugin called Erosion. It adds a little tiny harmonic, bit crushy kind of sound, which is quite nice. And you put it at a frequency, and it creates a little harmonic there, which sounds great on its own, just a little bit of it, but then we put a max LFO on it, and that moves the frequency so that it just drifts up and down, kind of like a phaser or something. Yeah. So on a couple of key sounds, we do it on this thing a lot, because it's already got the crush on it, that sound. Yeah. And we just put it on that, and then it just drifts up and down really, really slowly. And it just creates this lovely depth in the mix, really quiet. But then we'll put that on 2 or 3 sounds per track in the whole EP, so they're all doing that. And that way they just sit in this kind of little world, or we'll try grouping the drums and mixing them separately. So sometimes, at the moment, what I'm doing with a lot of the top lines is group all the top lines together into a group, compress them really, really hard, distort them a little bit, sidechain them pretty heavily, and then the kick and the clap are just free to be on their own. But that's just for now. By the time we come to the next record, that will probably all change. But it's just from watching videos, or just picking up little tips of discovering little tricks that actually sound Warren has a whole array of tiny little synth sounds in the box that just sound so nice, and they just fill in all the gaps really nicely, and we use them on all our tracks. So it's just a collection of lots of small things we've picked up over the years that work really well, and then we just kind of place them in, and then that means our finished product. We could make a house track or a techno track, and you can still hopefully tell that it's us. Yeah.
Nice one. Cool. Any other questions, guys? Yeah. Just grab the mic real quick.
When do you feel that your producer job stops and when your mixing process starts? Because as a recording and mixing engineer, I know very well that this is kind of like a endless war in yourself, because you can see both things at the same time. So does it happen often to you guys when you're producing on your jam, but then you have some mixing thoughts that you say, oh gosh, this is not the time, so can I
it's a toss up really. We kind of do mix as we go along.
It's kind of together, yeah.
But then
when we need to put a record out.
Is it
when we have a deadline.
By the way, is it ever happened that you give your
yeah.
tracks to a mixing engineer or the
No,
label?
we never have done that.
Okay, so
yeah.
you do everything on your, including mastering.
We don't do the mastering. No.
Okay.
I think it's good to get someone else to do the mastering.
sometimes maybe it happens that you don't need to do the mix because you made the mix while producing and it comes on the right laughs.
It's most way there. I think it will get it to a point where the demo will sound good, and if it's signed, then it's like, all right, well, how can we elevate each sound? So like you say, the ingredients of a cake, right? If all the ingredients are good,
it's going to work.
It's going to work. It's going to taste great. It's all right. We'll just spend so much time refining each sound so that it all fits together really well.
Do you feel that your ears are overcooked sometimes?
Yeah,
if you stay at the back while it's
absolutely,
mixing, maybe don't you feel that maybe you need to take a break out of the studio?
All the time.
Okay.
Time is really important. I said it earlier, but like leaving a track for like a week and not listening to it is so important because it becomes so immediately obvious when something's wrong. Whereas when you're in the room, even with two of us, like the benefit of having another person with two of us is you've got a second pair of ears to tell you that's too loud or whatever. But obviously, if we're both sat there all day, sometimes you can't tell. And if you just leave it for a week or as long as you can physically leave the track and then open it fresh, it's glaringly obvious where the problems are. So time is a very useful one. So we'll spend a bit of time making a whole bunch of demos and sketches and whatever, and then we'll just put them all aside and just wait.
And do you create another project of the stems, or you just mix on the producer
it's all
project?
On the
Yeah, okay. Okay, because I think that maybe help to stay focused on steps back in production. So maybe if you just hold your files without any effects or sounds, maybe
it kind of runs all the way through though for us. Like there's a lot of layers, and we can usually pick them out. So we want to be able to change them. At this stage, it doesn't really matter. Like we're pretty frivolous with the recording.
When you do jam, you have just a Ableton left and right recording just for reference, and then you re-record everything individually, or can you record everything individually?
We'd make the loop. We can multi-track a few things, and then basically when we know it's like in a good spot, we'll record like 3 minutes of that. But like the Electron stuff's really good for randomization, so we'll add in a lot of randomization,
details,
and then record like a nice long take, and then while it's recording, we'll play around with it. Same with the 2000, and then we'll have like a really long. Most of our hardware, like the synth recordings, are really long, like 200-300 bars going, and we'll like keep it quite contained, and then go really wild with it, and then do really playful, moving around a lot, moving really slowly, and then we've just got all of that, and then we can just chop it up later. And
so it could happen that you mix in while producing, basically.
All the time.
Okay.
Well, the nature of the music we're doing, it's like it relies on the mix.
It does depend though. Yeah. If you're searching for the idea or the root or the thing, you're less.
We don't really care.
You don't think about the end product.
Yeah,
you just want to get to all right, this idea is good. This idea is good. You want to go back and be like, oh, let me clean that. Do you know what I mean? You want to just keep going. And then when we've got there, then we can kind of, all right, now it's time to.
Probably when we start the arranging, is when the mixdown starts. Like, we don't start arranging until we know
that it's ready.
We can tell a story. We can get 5 minutes out of this. Okay. So then we'll start that, and then as we're doing that, that's when we start to think. Because also we automate volume a lot in the arrangement, and we do a lot of mid-side stuff. So stuff's moving to the sides and coming back into the middle and back and forth to change the focus. So obviously that's like going to affect the mix down. So once we start arranging and doing that, that's when we're really thinking. But that's only really once we've committed to the track. Like this is one we're actually going to finish. We do 30 sketches and finish 5. So the other 25, like, don't worry about it for those. But once we've committed them, like this is a good one, that's when the mixing starts, I suppose. Yeah. Because then it matters.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah. Question in front.
Thank you. Hey, thanks very much for the jam. Loved it.
No worries.
I have a question about live performance and if you use any of this gear live and how you approach live performance.
That's the plan.
This is the first time.
This is the first time we've taken it out of the studio.
Oh, nice, really?
It's terrifying.
This is the first time we've ever done this.
Yeah,
Really?
in front of anyone, yeah.
For us, it was harder not to dance.
I love that.
We want to play live.
Yeah,
Just
it's the next step, I think, because we're making live. So if we can get to the point where we're expressing ourselves through the instruments live, then it's like, all right, then
we've been talking about it for
a long time,
most of this year, but we're not going to rush it. But I mean, hopefully in the new year we'll get a chance to do it. But
okay,
it will probably be pretty much this.
Okay, cool.
Whatever's done in the box can be samples on here.
So this was going to be my follow-up question is, once you've sort of arranged everything on a DAW and you kind of, that's the track, that's how you want it to sound.
Yeah.
How will you or do you sort of get that back onto hardware. So
Yeah.
like you've obviously got a few samplers here, but
That's exactly how. Yeah.
yeah. So I full disclosure, I own Octatrack myself, and
Cool.
I'm sort of wondering how it's a great performance tool to sort of get ideas down, but
Yeah.
then as a performance tool when you're actually trying to play a completed track in a sort of different context, you're sort of using it in a different way. And I wondered if that's sort of how you've explored that.
So for some of my recent solo work, I've not used the computer at all. So I've done it all with this, and it's really good for arranging. I don't know if you've tried the arranging thing on it. It's great.
You're talking about like song mode and
On Octatrack, yeah, it's really good. And I use a spreadsheet to make my arrangements.
Nice.
Because I have to keep track of like what's going on. I can't see it. So I've got like a Google
Totally
sheet
fair.
with the arrangement in it. Yeah, it's pretty bad. But but sorry. But like what we can do is just the way we're thinking of doing it is basically anything that can't be recreated with the hardware, put it as samples.
Yeah.
As looped samples. Do the arrangements on here, but you can basically create like infinite loops in the arrangement. So there might be a bit where like the track drops or whatever.
Yeah.
And that can just loop infinitely, and then on here it's like one touch to move to the next scene, which might be the build-up or the bridge or whatever it might be. So that gives you the ability to improvise a bit and extend sections or keep them short, or go quickly if you need to do that.
I think we're in the process now of figuring out for our tracks that we have had out, which are the bits that we want to put into that, and
How it will translate.
and which were the most recognizable parts, and then which parts can we play live, which one can we be more free with.
Exactly.
And that's the fun part. It's going to take a while, but it's the fun part.
Yeah, I mean, like the backbone of some of the tracks, like the bits that don't change much, will probably fine to just be a sample because it's just doing legwork, like it's just keeping the track afloat. Whereas the expressive parts, obviously, we want those to be real and played live. So it will be a combination, of like, I mean, also like we've thought about the drums because every track obviously is using different drum kits. Whereas if we were to play live, we'd probably just keep like one or two kits for the whole thing. So the two Digitats are just kind of doing their own thing. And then, try and get all the expression into the synths as much as possible.
Okay.
We don't really know yet, but
Okay.
it's something we're planning on for the new year for sure, yeah.
Are you planning to go doorless for live, do you think?
Oh, yeah,
Or-
there won't be a laptop, yeah. It'll be like this.
More things that could go wrong with the laptop.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only reason we started doing just MIDI was because we were trying to sync even just two synths on a laptop, and we just couldn't keep them in time. It was an absolute nightmare. And like a USB hub will create hiss and send things out of time. And if it's all coming from the iMac or the laptop, or whatever, like putting a new plugin in slows the processing down, which sends things out of time. Just absolute nightmare. So really, it was born out of necessity. We're just like, if we just do actual MIDI, everything, as you can see, just stays in time. So there's just way fewer things that can go wrong without a computer, even though the computer technically gives you more choice.
It's an illusion.
I don't think that's good. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was going to be my next question, because it all seems pretty, free flowing and everything's making sense, but things go wrong. So, apart from the, decision to stop using doors, has there been any other time? Well, doors for obviously this process. Has any been? What's been the most challenging aspect of your music production? Can you never say your one
Recording. Recording the synths in using the USB interfaces and stuff, and just like we've got a good idea here, but it doesn't stay in time, and just getting really frustrated, and then having to warp it, which you don't really want to do with your recordings.
Do you mean like the most frustrating with this current setup as well, or just generally? Oh.
Generally, really. I mean, I'm just curious to know that we all have we all have lots of things to navigate when we're obviously getting music out there, and the technical aspect is always something that we have to deal with, right? And it can be very frustrating, and in your case, it gives you you just abandon using computers altogether. It's quite extreme, but it definitely pays dividends.
Yeah.
So more generally, I would say.
What do you think?
I think I was recording really. It was the only.
That was technically annoying. Yeah.
I think it's the process. We just wanted to, do something different and figure out what that would look like, what that would sound like, and be excited about that.
Yeah, I think for me, like the process, repeating the same process was a big thing. So like, I personally, I'm not very good at. I can't really make a track with just Ableton and like a mouse and keyboard. I know you did very well doing that, and still do, but I never really. I just didn't feel creative for me, and just find it quite frustrating. I kind of want something in my hands, and I guess that's the thing that's constantly. That was what gave birth to this. Was just like, if you're using the same tools, you're going to do the same process.
Yeah.
Not saying you need to buy more stuff, but it's really about changing your workflow.
And yeah, I mean, and changing your workflow being the operative word there, I guess, was there a kind of a letting go of a process, using, a DAW in the box, particularly in your case, Warren?
Yeah.
Going from, that way of working and a very kind of, let's use the word formal, just in terms of the approach. This feels a very kind of informal approach to kind of music composition, not just in terms of generating your ideas, but also just in letting go and trusting your ideas and trusting the machines, trusting the mistakes,
What's that, a pigeon?
Sample it. Yeah, so there's a lot of trust in you generating material that will work, in this process, rather than, say, if you worked in a more formal way, then obviously it can be a bit more structured, and you kind of get my point.
No. For me, definitely, it was a learning curve, because, for example, when you have the screen, when you have the DAW, it's also visual as well as audio, so you can see the spaces, you can see the pockets, you can see the arrangement, you know where your kicks are. So for me, like, getting rid of the visual stuff was a bit of a learning curve, but then realizing that the limitations of that are actually outweigh the perceived negative effect of like not being able to see it. So I realized, all right, cool, and that opens up your mind again, and you just go again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No.
All right. So yeah. Did you want to add?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Do you want to add?
No. So what's next for you guys, apart from live show in January?
Yeah, we'll see. We're working on some new material at the moment.
Yeah.
For Faux Poly and for some other labels. We've got a really big remix. It was going to be a VA, like a compilation remix of everything on Faux Poly this year, like the catalogue. But we had such an amazing response from everyone we asked. We're sat on like 40 remixes now. So,
which one person is in the room, right?
Sorry,
somebody's in the room.
Someone's in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, right. We mixed it last week in the studio. It sounds so good.
I was just telling him earlier that we'd listened to it on the runway as we were about to go.
Yeah, we're on a plane.
And by the time we got to the end, it's like,
it's good.
There's no signal. So, yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, it's really nice. So that we're actually going to space them out through the whole year. So we were going to just do one release, and now actually we've got so many. We're going to alternate original releases on the label, and then just keep a stream of remix EPs coming. And it's really nice because we put a lot of work into the sounds of each track, as Jake Harder, and we've got Steve Roberts coming up as well. And one thing we try and keep control of with the label is like we want each sound to be like quite iconic and quite memorable. Each like bass sound and vocal and whatever. And now, because of all these remixes, all those sounds are going to like permeate through all these different music scenes. So we've got like jungle, and we've got house, we've got techno, and we've got loads of breakbeat and like everything, all using the samples. So like it's going to really help the label, hopefully give it a nice
permeate club culture.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Really, the samples can go beyond the.
It's really interesting to see how people interpret your sounds, because the scope is so wide in terms of the feedback we've had and the tracks. It's
great.
So good. So
we're working on that, and then a couple of EPs for ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we've got a couple of artists coming up on the label. So yeah, just when they're ready, they'll come out.
Busy, but just let us know when this, this setup becomes a stage manifestation.
We've told people about it now. We have to.
Yeah, we're going to hold them to it. Right? We're going to hold them to it, right? Yeah. Cool. Warren, Joe, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, man.